Okay, picking up where we left off, we're on page 419 talking about how to use CSS to be able to do this. If you look at figure 919 on page 419, they basically do what I just did. They also threw in a clear just to make it, having a series of floats and floats and floats looks a little weird. I mean, you probably ought to go in here and say input and have it clear the float. I mean, just to be tidy. Is it really going to help much? Well, no. But hey, give me a break. I mean, looks the same, but it's more better. It's more better if it's that way. Okay, cool. On page 420, we're talking about server-side processing, which we're not going to do. We're not server people. We're web people. So in the old days, they had this thing called the Common Gateway Interface, CGI. And by the way, CGI means something completely different now. This is an old term. In the old days, you could write a small application. All you had to do was just follow a set of rules, the CGI rules. And whenever you submitted this data to the web server would just run this external application. And the external application could be written in Perl or C or Visual Basic. Doesn't matter what it was written in. So your web server would launch another application. It would gather the data with the last name, first name, the colors, the status, and all the rest of that stuff, and just pass that off to this other application. Okay, that's the way it worked for years. And then they got some security issues. It's like, I really don't like the fact that I'm having these extra pieces of software that are running, because all you would have to do is just tweak that little application, and then all your security is gone. So now they use what's called server-side scripting. So this is a script that runs inside the web server. It doesn't have to. Sometimes what they're called like plugins, but it doesn't launch another application. It runs a script, but it's inside the context of the web server. So the web server knows how to protect itself from the outside world. And so it's under the security context of the web server, which is a lot better than just saying, hey, here's some data and do what the heck you want with it and let us know how it comes out, without paying attention to the thing at all. There's lots and lots of these guys. You may have heard of PHP and Ruby on Rails and all those other things. Java. You can run Java on the local machine, although that's not common now. But certainly running a Java serverlet, that's a good term, a serverlet on the server, and a little Java application on the server. What I do when I do advanced programming on the web, I use .NET. So I use like Visual Basic .NET or C# and have web components running on the server that are based upon the .NET languages. But there's a bunch of them. You probably heard of Active Server Pages. That's an old one. Now it's called ASP.NET, and they kept the name but nothing else. Cold Fusion, Java Server Pages. You probably heard some of those terms. Okay. Again, we're not going to do that. I'm just telling you those things exist. So if you're one of those developers that are working on something like this, you're probably going to need, you, the web person, is going to be producing this pretty looking cool visual display and sending the data. Somebody else is going to be handling that part. So you're probably going to have to talk to them, because they're going to tell you, hey, I need the guy's age. And you're going to say, oh, okay, so you're going to have to go add a field in here that adds the guy's age. But, other than that, you need to be talking to each other, but you don't need to be in each other's business. The next one they talk about is privacy. On page 423, what do you do with the information that got sent to you? Well, this is a scary subject. A lot of people are very, very concerned about privacy. And so they want to know, when I fill out my name, address, and social security number, mother's maiden name, and shoe size, that what are you doing with that? Are you storing it? Are you just doing it temporarily? You're going to throw it away? And so the web gods recommend that you have a privacy statement somewhere on your web page that says, I throw this stuff away or I store it. Particularly if it's entering in my payment data, right? I'm entering in my credit card. What are you going to do with that? You going to keep it in your database someplace? I want to know, okay? So that's a big issue. On page 424, they talk about all the new HTML5 controls. And all these controls are about input validation. They're made it so that, oh, I forgot to do one. Hey, let's make one of these guys required. Remember we talked about having the required field? Okay, so I'm going to go up here and I guess I'll pick on this first guy. And I'm going to say, oh, I must have picked on the label. Yep, it actually helps if you pick on the actual, honest-to-God input box. And I want to say required. All right. Now, if my web browser is going to behave, what happens if I just forget to put that and I type in Smith and my password and I hit send data? It's going to come back and say, this field is required. I didn't have to do any web programming to make this thing happen, and nothing got sent to the other end. It's just completely automatic. This is what's called input validation. It requires me to type in Bob before I send the data. Cool? All right. Now, there's lots of different types of input validation. Let's say, for example, I'm trying to input I'm asking for an email address. So yeah, you could just use just a normal one, right? Just a plain old normal everyday. So I'm going to go ahead and do label for, whoop, I don't have to spell it right. For email. And then I'm going to use one of these new guys. So it's input, but my type is going to be, what do you think the type would be? Well, it's going to be email, right? Cool. I do need to have the ID, email, ID, email, and I need the name. Is equal to email. Okay. And let's put a BR in here. All right. So if I type in and hit send data, it's going to come back and say, that don't look right. That don't look like an email address. Okay. So to make this, okay, let me try it one more time. I don't want to have two things wrong. So Bob Smith, and I type in XXXXX. It's going to come back and say, you must enter a valid. So it's doing some pattern matching. So it doesn't actually check to see if the email you typed in is correct. Okay. It doesn't say, you know, like I can say dumbass at kumquat.com, and it's going to say, sure, that's cool. It just has to look like it's not a real email address. It just has to look like one. Okay, that's input validation. So they have one for, does it look like an email? They have one that says, does it look like a URL? Because, you know, URLs are going to have slashes and maybe HTTP and that kind of stuff. They have one that, does it look like a telephone number? They have a bunch of these things. They have one for picking a color, picking a date, month, number, range, time, week. And now the problem is not all of these are supported in every single browser. Now the good thing is, if they are not supported, it doesn't harm anything. Because if they're not supported in your browser, it'll just be a plain old text box. And there's no harm, okay? So go ahead and use these guys. It's perfectly okay. If they work, all the better. If they don't work, so what? That just means the guy at the other end, the programmer on the other end, is going to have to check to see if these things have valid data in them or not. That's all. They have one called Search, and it's specifically designed for doing search results. And so, you know how you could type in like an asterisk or something, those little search request kind of things? And so it's designed to make sure that your search request looks like a search request. Okay, on page 426, they talk about the data list. And you might think, well, wait a minute, if you look at the picture, it looks an awful lot like the little combo box thing we did. Remember we did this guy? So for example, I'm going to go ahead and take this multiple guy out just temporarily. All right, let's look at what this thing has. So I'm going to run this one more time. So now my choices are red, green, or blue. But what if I wanted brown? I want to select off the list and have the ability to submit my own color. Okay? So I need something else. And this data list is the way to do that. So let me go build me a data list here. Okay, so this is another one of those weird ones where it's the input type. Is still text. Okay, this is the part that's a little weird. Okay, just kind of bear with me for a minute. So I'm gonna go ahead and say, I don't know, I'm gonna call this one colors2, and name equals colors2. I didn't have a label. I guess I should do that, huh? For consistency's sake. All right. So I have an input, and inside my input guy, I'm going to have a data list. So I'm going to go here and go data list. And inside my data list, I'm going to have options. So this is going to look an awful lot like the other one, right? It's not going to be that much different. In fact, I could probably... Let me go ahead and grab these guys, because I'm lazy. Okay, cool. Now, what I was trying to do here is to get this guy to show me how I can do one of, like this, except it's not going to like that. See how the input type wants to be that guy? So I need to have this guy completed off. It has to have the complete, and now I need to be able to associate the two. So how do I tell it that this input guy is associated with that list? Well, it's done with list equals. And I'm going to say, oh man. Options 2, I'm running out of stupid things to say. So over here I need to put and say options 2. Okay, so now I've associated this input guy with a data list. Okay, doesn't look any weirder. Now let's just run this guy. So, oh, that's right. Now I have red, green, or blue, or I can type in brown. Right? So I can pick off the list if I wanted to, but I don't have to. Man, I need to put a label in there. Otherwise, this thing looks stupid. So let me go ahead and do that, because this is crazy as hell. Let me do a BR in here. And then go ahead and grab me a label. So this looks halfway decent. And we'll call this one, I don't know, colors2. Okay, now let's see. Okay, that's much better. So now, when I click this, I can pick things off the list if I wanted, but if I don't want to use it, okay. So one more time, what's the difference between using that select guy and the data list guy? Well, select is you pick something off a list, and if it ain't on the list, tough shit. This guy says you can pick things off a list if you want to save yourself from typing, but if you want to type in your own stuff, that'd be okay. That's the difference between the two. Cool? Okay. There's a slider control. These things don't always work in every browser, as we've said before. So I'm going to do label for age. Okay. And then I'm going to put me another guy in here, and he's going to be an input, but his type now is going to be range. Range. And as you can probably imagine, there's going to be like a min. So minimum age is 0, and maybe the maximum age is, I don't know, 150, some big number, right? Okay. So doesn't that kind of sort of make sense? But we're on the 15-minute mark, so we'll finish it up in just a few.